The first thing Rarity realized was that she was cold. The second her head was hurt, like it had been hit with a bunch of stack of bricks. The third was the faint high-pitched noise that she was making the pain much, much worse. Instead of going away, however, the noise was steadily getting louder and clearer. Rarity drew in a shuddering gasp as she started to cough violently. After a few more long deep breaths, she was able to blink and bring the objects around her to focus. Icy flakes drifted erratically down from the sky above to stick Rarity's coat, but there was a rich golden light emanating from the two street lamps nearby. She was lying in the snow, and a long messy track stretched out behind her like the proud powder, and in the road, zipping back and forth, mentally unhinged chicken, was Pinkie Pie, yelling at the top of her lungs. "Will some pony call a doctor already?" she bellowed. "I know none of you are asleep anymore, so quit pretending. We have a fading fashionista out over here." "Pinkie, please. Do I have everything to myself? Hello? Is any pony living here in Ponyville at the moment?" "Pinkie, shut up!" Rarity yelled, but she regretted instantly as the pain surged. She groaned and hugged her head with forehooves as Pinkie whirled around and bolted to her side. "You're alive! Oh, thank goodness! I thought you were a goner!" Pinkie exclaimed. "I looked into the window, and at first I didn't see anything. Then I saw you come in from the kitchen. You were all like, blah! And then you were like, gah! And then you couldn't get up and—" "Pinkie," Rarity said, shoving a hoof in Pinkie's mouth. "For the love of all things Texel, slow down, and above all, quiet down, please." Pinkie managed to say, nodding slowly. Rarity pulled her hoof away and slumped a little lower at the snow. "Ugh, I feel awful. What happened?" You left all your gas lines open," Pinkie explained, her face in a fearful frown. "I came by to tell you I heard you from one of Maud's art professors, but when I knocked you didn't answer. I was about to leave and try again tomorrow, but then I saw you come out of your kitchen acting all weird." "Gas lines," Rarity mumbled, her memory slowly returning to her. "But how did— I got scared," Pinkie said, sniffing a little. Rarity realized Pinkie's knees were shaking violently. "I yelled, but you didn't hear me, so I broke in and I heard all your gas lines were running and you wouldn't wake up, so I had to drag you out here." "You did?" Rarity asked. Pinkie nodded. "Yeah, sorry about your door, by the way." Rarity looked over at the trail of snow led from her mouth open. The door had been split in half and all the pieces lay several feet inside the room. The window glass was spread across all directions, and the hinges had been torn out of the frame, leaving a huge splintered holes behind. Rarity couldn't hold back the shock-shaky laugh. "Pinkie, you know something? I really, really hated that door." Pinkie smiled, but her eyes were still fearful as she joined Rarity in a slight halting laugh. "Rarity, why are your lines open?" Pinkie's smile faded as an almost heartbroken expression rose into her face. Her ears lay back and tears stood in her eyes. "You weren't—" "No, Pinkie," Rarity said, slowly pulling her hurting limbs under her and standing with a loud groan. "It wasn't me, She paused, unsure of what to say, but Pinkie's eyes slowly grew wide and her jaw fell in horror. You're not staying here," she said firmly. "But Pinkie, are you crazy?" Pinkie exclaimed. "You almost died tonight, Rarity. I can't let you stay here." Rarity looked up at the tall, dark shape of her home, its monolithic spire rising into the empty night above them. "I can't just run, Pinkie. If I don't make this work, I'm done for. Everything is done for." "You can start somewhere else, you can." "No, I can't, Pinkie," Rarity snapped, turning her head to look back at her friend. "I've put everything into the shop. If it doesn't open, it just won't be on me. When I can't pay back what I owe, it'll fall into my parents, and even they'll probably won't be able to cover everything. I can't do that to them. They have another daughter to raise, and I can't give up on this, Pinkie. It's gone too far." "But we could figure something out," Pinkie pleaded. "Just for now, come on. Just treat it as a sleepover. It would be fun, right? You could stay with me for a few days while you get your door fixed, and maybe we could figure out how to fix whatever's happened in there." Rarity paused and then nodded, her lips drawn in the thin, resonated line. You're right, Pinky, this is... I don't know, but I think you're right. I know you're talking, Pinky said, striding firmly towards the broken door. Now you just rest here for a moment. Pinky, what are you doing? Rarity's eyes widened in alarm. Your gas is still on. We can't just leave it like this. Some pony could stop by and get hurt. We'll call someone to take care of it. You don't need to. Pinky, don't go in there, Rarity cried. But Pinky had already sucked in a huge breath and hopped over the debris by the door, vanishing into the gray interior. Rarity sprang forward, but her shaky limbs gave out and she stumbled over as her headache and nausea surged again. She took a few deep breaths, then struggled to her hooves and prepared to chase after Pinky. Just as she was about to go in after her, Pinky sprang back at the empty doorway and let out a breath-long whoosh. Phew, almost didn't make it, she chirped. All done, bedroom, basement, and all. I found the main line to the kitchen and shut that off too. With a flourish, she pulled a wrench from her mane. A brass valve handle gripped it firmly against its jaws. Let's see it turn on the gas without this. Pinky, that was incredibly foolish. I know. Pinky stuffed the wrench back in her mane. But I'm cold and I want to get you home. Now come on. We have a sleepover to get to. She was grabbed by Rarity and pulled her along the road, although Rarity quickly realized Pinky was supporting her more than anything else. She relaxed a little and let herself lean into her friend. They walked up in the brightly lit stairs of Ponyville together, snow falling peacefully around them as they left the dark broken door and the old shop and its toxic air behind them. By the time they have reached Sugar Cube Corner, Rarity felt almost normal again. The headache had faded into a slightly painful twinge, and although she still felt exhausted, there were no sign of draining fatigue that had pulled her into unconscious at the shop. The Cakes had asked no questions about Pinky's loud declaration that Rarity would be staying with them. They had simply welcomed her warmly and offered her some refreshments before heading back to bed. After heading up to Pinky's tiny attic room, Rarity mentally reclined herself in Pinky's ability to coordinate her color as she beheld the colorfully, brightly clashing conjureman party of decor imaginable. As Rarity settled in, Pinky gave her the letter that had brought her to the shop in the first place. Rarity sat on the edge of the thick pink sleeping bag, nibbling on the flake rolls as she frowned at what she was reading. The stationery indicated that the letter was from a Ponyville named Dr. Bristlebreaker, the head of the art department at the University of Vancouver. She was surprised that it was typed, not written, and the narrow, slightly splotchy colors crowded the page and made it difficult to read. Pinkamania Pie, Sugar Cube Corner, 170114, Kent Road, Ponyville. Dear Miss Pie, this message is a response to the recent request for a department assistance in your research. You will find enclosed copies of all the materials we have to offer in the artist in question, a Miss Tularula, last known reside in Ponyville. I must apologize for the amount of information is limited, but there is simply very little documentation about her career. As it happens, I myself met her personally on a few occasions during my days as an art critic and reviewer, but the encounters were brief, and it was clear to me that even that her career was unlikely to be noteworthy. We hope that this information is helpful to you, and we are pleased to have been assistance. You should have any further information. The university would be only too happy to work with you. Trusting this letter finds you well, I am your humble servant, Dr. Bristlebreaker. P.S. Regarding your other query, yes, I do remember your sister. It would be hard to forget some pony who managed to win the freshman art competition at 14 foot still of a pebble. The envelope contained only a few other items. There were reprints of articles that had appeared in Canterlot Art Review by Dr. Bristlebreaker himself. Although he had lacked academic title at the time, the third was a short article that appeared in Manhattan Times sometime between the first review and the second. Scrutinized them more closely. Rarity nodded that the first review had been written not long after Tularula had opened her gallery in Ponyville. Miss Rula's art is, in word quaint, to be sure that she demonstrates a high degree of compensity of the basic forms and techniques at her medium, and her oil landscapes are at least pleasing to look at. There is a certain quality in her use of lighting that gives an almost otherworldly glow to her scenes when viewed the right luminance. But sadly, this is as far as her imagination has taken her to date. There is little to her work that any pony would find challenging, and the air of the melancholy, as how beautifully suffices her work, with render them poor choices for even casual decor. We hope she will continue to develop her art in the future and look forward to seeing other ways in which she broadens the horizons as more worthy subjects. Not a very complimentary piece, Rarity said to herself. The news clipping came in next chronologically. It had been printed a few years later, and it looked decidedly less favorable tone. An independent event was greatly disrupted yesterday when one of the vendors, a rural landscaper painter named Tula Rula, was arrested following a violent outburst in the display gallery. Witness informed us that Rula simply went berserk, following a confrontation with several local artist critics, and became violent. She just started screaming at every pony, one of the visitors to the gallery informed us. Yelled that no pony knew anything about good art, and that she didn't even know why she bothered to bring her work if all the pony wanted was to abstract academic trash. Can you imagine telling a gallery full of enthusiasts that they don't know anything? Talk about country nut. One of the patrons, believed to be a friend of the artist, was seriously injured in an attempt to restrain Rula, who then turned on her instead. Several patrons called Rula kicking and stomping the mare repeatedly before the authorities could intervene, yelling all the while about her friendship being in sham. The mare's name had been not released, but she is expected to make it a full recovery before returning to her home in Ponyville. Rula, meanwhile, faces several charges of assault and disturbing the peace, and will be held in the Manhattan Regional Courthouse, pending preliminary hearing. What in equestria happened to you? Rarity asked, laying the article aside. Sorry, what? Pinkie asked, Tilt raising her head from where she had sprawled on the bed. Oh, nothing, darling. I was just reading what your art professor friend sent us. Do you know I think Tula Rula attacked Miss Dog-Ear when they were younger? What? Pinkie exclaimed, rolling over to stare at Rarity. Who would ever want to hurt Miss Dog-Ear? She was the sweetest, most kindliest lady you could ever met. I'm not too sure. Rarity tapped the floor with her hoof as she frowned a thought. But from the sounds of things, I speculate Tula's gallery wasn't doing well and she took it personally. I think she started taking it out on everyone, and even the ones closest to her, including Miss Dog-Ear. How do you even know that? Pinkie asked. Well, I think I've been in a similar position. Rarity answered grimly and turned to the last article. December 965. Rula Art Gallery, Ponyville. Final rating, very poor. This review was conducted by the request of the gallery owner. The gallery itself is a little-known establishment in the village of Ponyville, a small but charming hamlet located in the shadow of Canterlot. As the artist had submitted work for our review several years prior, we are excited to visit in hopes of discovering a local gem. Unfortunately, we cannot under any category recommend that art fundamentals add Ponyville to the list of destinations. The gallery itself is a rundown and dismantled affair, plagued by the atrocious lighting and malodorous air. The artist herself, while claiming to intervene herself, found a new inspiration, and has taken her work in a disturbing and lamentable direction. There are a few words to describe our dismay and the utterly vile and loathsome work on display at the Rula Gallery. The artist appears to have attempted interpretation of Equestria's early fantastic period, which any educated connoisseur will know about the misfortune period of art for any sense of word. Such to see it as imitated would be bad enough, but Miss Rula had taken already a bad art form and given it a truly distasteful macabre turn. We would hazard that even veterans of medical profession would have found themselves sickened by the abhorrent pairings were being shown. In response to the utterly distasteful direction she had taken her work, Miss Rula only had this to say. It's not my fault if you don't like what you feel when you see my work. No artist can make any pony feel anything. What a pony feels in response to art is they already have inside them. So if you look at these and you feel something dark rising in the surface, wrath, melancholy, maybe even slightly carnal response, it's because you have that in you, and you don't want to acknowledge it. My work is like a mirror, and you can't blame a mirror for what you see when you look in it. As much as we hate venturing into a territory that would be considered character assassination, we could be remiss in a review of the gallery as a whole if we failed to mention that Miss Rula's conduct host was singularly unpleasant, far from being welcomed. We found our ability and integrity to insult at every turn. In one occasion, suffered a verbal threat to our physical safety. Upon inquiring further with the residents of Ponyville, we have learned a very little surprise that Rula Gallery is almost totally shunned by the community, and Rula herself regarded as the erratic and possibly dangerous hermit. You go there and you're all going to be told is you're an idiot and some kind of monster. A local farmer who had asked to remain unnamed told us, to tell the truth, that's just one rotten apple, and the town would be better off without her. Pinky looked over Rarity's shoulder quizzically. So what does it say? Well, it certainly seems that Tularula led an unpleasant life, Rarity said, tucking the papers away. But I don't see anything here that would give me a clue about what could be happening. If I know better, I'd be almost inclined to say it wasn't magic, and that she really was. Rarity shook her head. Whatever's happening, I think it's been using Tula's past to mislead me. Something that must have happened further back and Tularula got caught up on it. But you said you'd done research on Tularula brought in, and nothing seemed to be happening. That's the puzzle, Rarity said, frowning and settling lower into the sleeping bag. But what another explanation is there? I don't know, Pinky said, rolling over to face the ceiling. I think you were on the right track before. There could still be some weird magical happenings related to her. Earth Pony magic isn't like Unicorn or Pegasus magic, you know. Unicorn magic is all pow, whoosh, zing, flash, and Pegasus magic is all tied up with the weather and the sky and stuff, and Earth Ponies, though... Pinky trailed off, her expression thoughtfully as she looked at the ceiling. Earth Ponies became a part of things when we took on or make things, when we get connected with them in a way I don't think other ponies quite understand. We all get tied up in it, and that's why we're such good farmers, and why we get so attached to our farms. We become a part of them, and we can feel what's going on within them. My sister could probably tell you what the grain field is all ready to harvest anywhere in Equestria. They are close to it, and we go put on much of ourselves into work when we got so much back from it too. We got the kind of energy from it after a while. It's almost like we grow off each other, you know? Rarity was looking at Pinky with a dawning comprehension. She scrambled up and snatched a sheet of pink stationery from a little desk nestled in the corner of the room, sitting down and levitating the quill over to it. Pinky, I want you to repeat everything you just said to me, and then I need you to teach me everything you can. I think everything is starting to make sense. Rarity paced nervously around the perimeter of the showroom, her hooves thudding softly against the warm carpet. She had lit the lamps that morning in an attempt to make place more warm and inviting, and the attempt succeeded to some extent. The bright glow of the lamps combined through the rich colors and textures of the decorations of the single rack she had managed to fill with mock-up designs shone brightly in one corner. Unfortunately, the lamps had also once again made it significantly hotter inside, and it worked together with her nerves just to keep up the perpetual light sweat. A firm knocking sounded on the door. Rarity took a long deep breath in an effort to pull the quill spike and adrenaline as she felt it wash over her. She paused for a moment to reaffirm her resolve, then walked over to the door. It was a brand new stable door style with clear diamond-shaped windows, and it shaped soundlessly as she lifted the latch. "Hello, Applejack," she said, Ed holding a weak smile on her face. Applejack regarded her with a blank, stony expression. Only a slight crease between her eyebrows betrayed the suspicion which she had regarded Rarity. Got your letter, she said bluntly. Fluttershy here yet? No, not yet, Rarity admitted, her ears falling back. It's a little early though, so I'm hoping anyway. Won't you please come in? Applejack shrugged and allowed herself to be led inside. Rarity noted with the irritated pang that she didn't remove her winter boots from near the rear hooves, but she decided it would be a bad idea to press the matter. Can I get you anything? She offered instead. No, thank you, Applejack said curtly. You invited me here because you said you had something to say. Well, you might as well get on and say it. Oh, yes. Well, I was hoping to speak to you and Fluttershy at the same time, but... Rarity was interrupted by a barely audible tap from behind her. Turning quickly, she pulled the door open and smiled when she saw Fluttershy standing on the doorstep, her head low and the only visible behind her mane. Rarity's smile wavered and nearly failed when she saw the look in Fluttershy's eye. It was a clear mixture of fear and suspicion. Rarity forced herself to stay optimistic and said, Hello, Fluttershy. Thank you so much for coming. Really, I don't deserve it. You got that right, Applejack said behind her. It's okay. Fluttershy stepped in carefully and took off her boots. Her eye never left once Rarity. Please sit down, Rarity answered, gesturing to the antique couch. Fluttershy made her way over to it while Applejack pulled up her lip back in the slight distaste. When Fluttershy sat down, Applejack opted to lean against the armrest and faced Rarity with a guarded, stony look. Rarity took another deep breath. I owe you both an apology, she began, looking from one to another. Her head was bowed and her ears laid back flat. Especially you, Fluttershy. The things I said and did when you were visited were totally inexcusable. You were trying to be so kind to me and I lashed out at you with everything I had. I don't deserve your friendship after acting that way. I know that. Applejack, everything you said in the market the other day was completely true. The things I said in response were also inexcusable. Oh. Rarity swallowed and closed her eyes. I was wrong. I only hope we could make a few things right. Fine talk, Applejack said. But what about Pinky? I hear she's back. Why is she here? Pinky and I have already talked, Rarity explained. She found me the day she came back. For a long moment, no one had said anything more. Applejack huffed, looking critically at Rarity as if trying to decide how to respond. Before she could, however, Fluttershy whispered, Why? I'm sorry, what? Rarity asked, her heart beating fast. She had been dreading one of them would ask that question. Why would you say those things? Fluttershy asked, her voice nearly motionless, and she also kept it carefully paced and even. I don't understand what I did wrong. Why did you yell at me? You didn't do anything wrong, darling, Rarity said, closing her eyes and bowing her head further. I wish I had a better explanation to give you. The truth is, I really don't know. I don't have any excuse for what I did. I can only tell leading up to it. But it's like the whole world was falling apart. I was so angry and I didn't know what to do or where to go. I was also tired of not thinking straight. And while we were here, She paused, unsure of how to describe what she remembered what happened next. I don't know if I fell asleep or something worse happened to me, but I thought you all heard me that my work wasn't any good, and that I was trying to suck up to every pony, and I thought you heard me that I should just give up. Rarity looked up and saw Fluttershy's confused frown. She looked almost angry. Applejack just even looked baffled. I don't know if it was a dream or a delusion or what, but I remember so clearly even now. I can't imagine how I didn't think to question how stupid it was to think you would ever try say such things. When you were beside me, you let all that anger and indigestion out on you. I was utterly wrong. And I know how weak that explanation sounds, so I can only hope that Mike forgive me one day. She looked up and saw both of them watching her. Neither of them wanted to say anything. She bit her lip and turned, walking towards a large box that had left her on the sewing table. That's what I wanted to say, she said shakily, and I also wanted to give you both something, if you'll accept it. You trying to bribe us now? Applejack asked, a sadistic bite in her tone. Rarity felt her provide a swell of the scorn, but she pushed it firmly back. It's not a bribe, she said eventually. It's just a gesture of goodwill. It's the only thing I know how to do. The only good thing I'm good at, so... She carried the box back to the sofa and sat down in front of them, opening it with her magic. First, she pulled a small square of faded cloth that was dyed in warm orange color and moved it towards Applejack. I thought your little sister might like it. Sweetie Belle has a pink one. She practically won't let it be taken off, she explained, smiling nervously. Applejack took the blanket in her hooves and practically unfolded it, her sculpted expression fading away slightly as her eyes widened. Whoa, Nellie, it's so soft. What is this? Canterlot cashmere, Rarity replied. It's big enough to grow with her for a little while. You even put her name on it? Applejack said, running a hoof gently over the thick, rope-shaped yellow embroidery, spelling out Apple Bloom in a slightly rustic cursive script. And just an afterthought I had this morning, Rarity said, pulling out several broad pink ribbons. I have a feeling that the hair accessories are going to be in for foals this season, and I thought she would look just darling with the bow or two in her name. I even put the magic in them so she can pull them out, and then chew on them, in case she's so inclined. Oh gosh, Rarity, do you have any idea how hard I've been trying to keep Granny from gussing up that poor filly? Applejack asked, but she smiled reluctantly and took the ribbons nevertheless. Then her expression sobered, and she had a hard look returned to her eyes. This all awful nice stuff, Rarity, but I don't know if I can accept it. Let me finish before you decide, Applejack said, Rarity the reaching into the box again. Fluttershy, I can't make up for the stuff I did. I know that, but this doesn't even begin to, but... She pulled out a brilliant teal scarf with dark blue stripes and held it out. I've never returned this after you lent it to me the other day. I couldn't help but notice that it had gotten battered here and there, probably from a little critter having a nibble or two. I expect I would have touched it up again and gave it a good cleaning, so it's good as new. And, she continued, pulling out a heap of teal blankets in all different sizes out of the box and laying them on the floor, I've made an entire set of blankets and bedding for all the animals you might host at your cottage. I know winter's nearly over, but these should hold up for years. Fluttershy took the scarf and stared at it, but aside from the slight frown, she didn't react. Rarity's heart fell. I just wanted to show my apology in something more than mere words, she said haltingly. If you don't want to accept it, I understand perfectly. Just know that I'm truly, really sorry, and I will work hard to ensure that nothing of sort of happens again for as long as I live in Ponyville. Rarity stood up a few steps. That's all I have. She felt like she ought to say something more, but everything just sounded repetitive or empty. Applejack had looked over Fluttershy, who hadn't moved since taking the scarf. Then Fluttershy stood and walked to Rarity. Both her bright and spring water blue eyes were firmly locked on her. Rarity, what you did really hurt me. I was so confused and scared. I do remember hearing you talking in the room the other day, but I couldn't hear what you said. I couldn't figure out what I had done wrong, and I didn't want to come out for days. Rarity swallowed and glanced away. She had nothing she could say in response. If I'm to be alone again, at least I'll know I've tried. Rarity felt a gentle hoof pulled her chin back. Fluttershy was staring at her intensely like she had never seen before. Are you both really sorry? Fluttershy and Rarity nodded, feeling tears burning at the edge of her eyes, and felt painfully stiff. Fluttershy glanced away for a second, then let out a heavy sigh that pulled Rarity close with one foreleg. It wasn't a tight hug. In fact, it felt more like a polite gesture than anything. But Rarity looked the foreleg around for Fluttershy and clung it like a lifeline. We all lose control of our emotions sometimes, Fluttershy said, almost to herself than Rarity. You don't need to bottle them all up from others. That's what made you lose control. I think I want to trust you to not let that happen again, Rarity. I won't, Rarity promised. Then she gave an ironic laugh. I've had a good few ponies drilling that into my head lately. Oh, good. Fluttershy drew back and gave Rarity a weak and decidedly warm smile. Then I accept your apology, Legee, and thank you for the gifts. They were really nice of you. Fluttershy wrapped her scarf around her neck and picked up the bundle of blankets. Heading towards the door, she opened it. She turned back and said, You owe me a trip to the spa, though. Fluttershy, Rarity said, with a weak smile of her own. I owe you 20 trips, thank you. With a soft click, Fluttershy closed the door and she was gone. Rarity turned to Applejack, who had gone back, looking at her with an unreadable expression. The little C's over her nose seemed to have gone forever, and Rarity took that as a hopeful sign. I don't know why you're apologizing to me, she finally said. You didn't do anything to me. I said I was utterly wrong and hurtful out of spite, Rarity said firmly. And I hurt your friends. That demands an apology. Applejack nodded once. Fair enough, she turned her head, giving Rarity a careful look. I don't know what I'm inclined as to a hug and forget as Fluttershy. For all I can tell, you're just playing with every pony's emotions. But since Pinkie and Fluttershy seem to have made up their minds, I guess I owe it to you for giving another chance. She held out a forehoof, and Rarity bumped it gently with a gentle smile. Good enough for me, Applejack said, headed for the door. Rarity followed her and led her out. As she stepped onto the doorstep, Applejack turned and gestured to the blanket and ribbons on her shoulder. Dad, I said I had some idea of how much you could have sold this blanket here for, and I know you had some struggles to keep this place above water. I'm a big enough mare to admit that this is the right nice thing you to do, Rarity, so thank you. You're most welcome, Applejack. Take care of Apple Bloom. You don't gotta worry about that, and you got your look out for your little sister of yours, too. Applejack nodded and started walking down the road. As Rarity made it to the door, Applejack turned and once more and asked, By the way, why are all the mirrors covered up? Oh, no reason. I just thought I had something to finish up. Applejack shrugged and made her way down the road. Rarity watched her go for a moment, then stopped and stepped inside and closed the door. She knew Applejack still didn't like her, and perhaps never would. Rarity had the notion that her first impressions went a long way with Applejack, and she made a terrible one. Her entity was gone through, and Rarity could have lived with that. As for Fluttershy, Rarity knew it would be a long time before her friendship healed and returned to the way it had been. The important thing was it had the chance to heal. Just one more thing to finish up, Rarity repeated, then turned towards the room while Fluttershy and Applejack had been there. The oppressive aura of anger and vigilance had faded, prickly, nudging presence that poked at her from the faint shadows in the room. Now it hung all around her, thick and vehement, pressing her mind on all sides as if she were under water. She knew she was looking for a gap in her defenses, as a glimmer of sympathetic emotion that could pour onto the flame. But she knew that to watch for now, that she could hold out a little longer. It was time. She walked to the dais and stepped up between mirrors. She took a long, deep breath, then grabbed each of the three shrouds and pulled them away gently. She could see the room reflected perfectly by the silver glass, the sewing table, fainting couch, ponyquins, and display racks were even all where they should be. The low vanity mirrors behind her remained covered. Two of them, Rarity knew, were now broken, and the one that she broken herself, and the one that had been shattered in the night Tula attacked her. But of all the things she could see in the three mirrors, she could not see herself. It was as if she didn't exist. She pushed her face as close as she could to the glass without touching it. She shouldn't have been able to see anything but her face staring back at her, but all she could see was an empty room. I know you saw that, she said gently, pulling back and standing a few paces away from the mirrors. That what I just did for them. That was me. That's how I want to use my art. She turned and looked at the door and friends had walked out and smiled a little. I don't think I always understood it, but I do now. Clothes and accessories, they seem frivolous and even a little cruel sometimes. Some ponies use them to make others feel bad about themselves. but some of the big firms tell even ponies that they aren't good unless they are wearing a certain line. Rarity turned back to the mirrors. But that's not how I want to use my art. I want to make things that bring happiness and draw ponies closer together. But even more than that, clothes can help ponies express themselves, to do something to themselves off of the pride and confidence. That's what I've always wanted to do. I think that's what I've always wanted to help others do. I want to make things that other ponies feel their best. She glanced at her cutie mark. It's not just making something that looks good. It's about bringing out something important for everyone who experiences it. I'm not saying art is all like that. We do all what we love to do for different reasons. That's just where it gets its own kind of magic. But you lost your reason somewhere along the way, did you? She looked from the mirror next to the sad expression. At some time or another, you started to see only the worst of everything around you, and you stopped seeing anything good in it. You drove everyone away and you convinced yourself that everything was wrong somehow, and then poured all of your anger and despair into your art. You drowned yourself in this poisonous miasma of evil emotions, and I don't know how, but it somehow managed to trap all of the darkness inside your paintings. And it's still here, Rarity continued, stepping a little closer. It's filled this place for years, hasn't it? Your art started to feed off of you, until the cycle drove you down so far. You couldn't see any trace of it light anymore. And I think you still haven't gotten free of it even now. On the other side of the room, tiny spot of movement caught Rarity's eye. A pink hoof had appeared in the kitchen doorway. A moment later, a pink earth pony had stepped into the showroom floor. She moved jerkily and awkwardly, as if trying to use any different muscles, but all of them hurt equally. She walked up behind Rarity with the limping, uneven steps, and as she drew closer, Rarity could tell that all of her proportions were just a little bit wrong. Shoulder was too wide or a leg too short, as if Rarity was looking at her from the wrong angle. Her fur had a stiff, wet look to it. Her multicolored mane was filled with thick, oily ripples, exactly as if she just stepped out of an oil painting. She looked at Rarity through the mirror. Her eyes, without a depth or spark, simple flat black pupils, were surrounded by dry, cracked white. They were vapid facades of what the real Tularula's eyes had liked. She stepped into the dust. Rarity fought every instinct inside that screamed at her to run, smash the mirrors, and end up in an impossible scene where she was witnessing. She could smell the odorless damps of leaves, bitter grittiness and estrangement, the mineral pine around her, the same scents that rose from the bottles of turpentine that crushed the metal tubes of oil paint abandoned in the cellar. Tularula moved timidly forward until she was standing right where Rarity ought to appear in the mirror. Rarity fought down a heave of revulsion and stood calm and still, looking at Tularula with unblinking eyes. Tula regarded her with an expression that was a mask of a quiet despair. She lifted a single shaking forehoof and pressed it against the mirror in desperate, reaching a gesture. Her lips didn't move, but Rarity almost heard the words, "Help me," bleeding from the every moment painted mare in the mirror made. But there was still something else, something hidden behind the painted face and the desperate gesture. No amount of coil could ever cover the darkness, and malignancy Rarity still felt around her. "No," Rarity said, shaking her head sadly. She felt her lips pulled down as tears came to her eyes. "You can't! You know I can't! It's too late for that!" The mirror bellowed outward like an under an apparent pressure, as if the alone was holding back an incredible tide of comprehension and feelings that could pour out and fill every lungs of every pony, caught saturating and drowning them. Tula's face had shifted slightly, the eyes whitening final desperate appeal for mercy, for release, for anything that would allow her to escape the shadow of existence that she had created for herself. The room in the mirrors changed, as if Rarity's showroom had been painted over. Everything seemed to wilt, rot, and crumble away, until nothing was left but a bare, dark walls. Where pony quins and display racks had been, easels were scattered about. Most held paintings, and the ones Rarity could see were filled with eyes that bored into her. A few were knocked over, and one against the wall barely visible behind the pink mare, who pushed desperately, trying to fixing the glass, was a dim, faded form of a prone body that lay unnatural stillness, its final moments of twisting, desperation, agony, captured from the mirror's golden frame. "Listen to me," Rarity continued, putting all of her hope and pleading into the eyes of the expression that almost mirrored Tula's. "I don't know how much Tula Rula is left in whatever this is, but you could stop this cycle of violence. I can help you do that, if you just let me. The darkness here could be filled with something else. Please, let yourself be more spite than spite and cruelty just one more time for her." There was a total silence in the room. Two mares stood there, unmoving, watching for some sign that they could act on. They stood staring as if everything that followed would depend entirely on who would choose to make the next move. Rarity waited, the silence weighing down on her, until her breathing was almost unbearable. The slight stalemate dragged on, the touristly undeterminedly, until a single whisper word broke into the silence. "Please." What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video, and I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Miss Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, stay pretty.